Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the monthly Oregon Area Progressives Community Open Mic. We are very pleased tonight to have the guests, two candidates for the Wisconsin State Supreme Court that will be on the ballot in February, right, for the primary? So February 18th is the primary election this spring. Put it on your calendar now so you remember to vote. And I will introduce those candidates in just a second here. The format tonight is going to be each candidate is going to give their stump speech, and then we will do a Q&A period. There are slips that are up at the front and some were handed out where that you can write questions on, and those slips go to Claire. If you could raise your hand. She's in the light sweater here, long dark hair. And so if you have a question, get it to her, and then she will get it to me, and I will ask the questions of the candidates. It's not like a real debate format, but we're going to try and give equal time to each candidate to be fair. And we did a coin flip at the beginning here, and Professor Falone is going to be the first. He's the Associate Professor of Law at Marquette University, and he's going to be the first person to go tonight, and then we'll have Dane County Circuit Judge Jill Karofsky second. So without further ado, here is Professor Falone.
Thanks so much. Good evening and Happy New Year. Happy New Year. It's great to be here with you tonight. I'm very happy. What a great turnout. I see that this is very similar to my constitutional law class. No one wants to sit in the first two rows. But it's okay. I'm not calling on anyone, so feel free to move up if you want to get closer. It's okay. I am Ed Falone, law professor at Marquette University Law School, and I'm running for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And the message of my campaign throughout has been very simple, very clear, very direct. When it comes to our judges and our judiciary in the state of Wisconsin, diversity matters, and diversity makes a difference. It's important, and it matters. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, my story, where I came from, my life experiences, how I've chosen to spend my career, my professional career as a lawyer for over 30 years. And I'm going to tell you why that makes a difference, and why this state Supreme Court election coming up is so important to the future of our state. I always start off by saying I'm the proud child of a Mexican immigrant and a public school teacher. And the way my parents met was extremely adorable. I mean, like little photo of a fuzzy puppy dog adorable. So if adorable, meet-cute stories drive you crazy, please leave, get another cup of coffee. You don't want to hear this. My father was going to a teacher's college in Pennsylvania. It was called the Indiana State Teachers College, even though it was in Pennsylvania. Very confusing. And he went to Mexico City on a college trip. And he took a couple of his friends, classmates, and they went to study and take classes in Mexico City. And while he was there, one of his American buddies said, "Hey, I heard about a party. You want to go?" My father was always up for a party. He said, "Sure." So his friend said, "There's just one catch. I have to meet you there because I have somewhere else to be first." So his friend gave my father detailed instructions of how to find this party. And my father didn't speak Spanish, never learned Spanish till the day he died. But he managed to follow these directions on his own through Mexico City, huge metropolis even then. We're talking 1960. He traveled by streetcar, he traveled by bus, he walked, and he found his way to a neighborhood to the address. And of course, his friend never showed up. So my father's all alone, a neighborhood he knows no one, a house he knows no one. He doesn't even speak Spanish. He finds the courage, he knocks on the door. My mother opened the door. It was her birthday party he had been invited to. As she took pity on this American student who showed up on her doorstep and invited him in, and they talked all night, and then he returned to the United States. They wrote letters back and forth every day, And then exactly a year later, on her birthday, he returned to Mexico City and they were married. Now I warned you. I warned you. And he brought her back to the United States. They raised 4 children in the state of Maryland, where my father taught English at the local public high school. And I was the second of 4 children. And we were a typical working class family. 1 teacher's salary. My mother stayed at home with us kids. We didn't have a lot of money. And it really didn't occur to me until it was time for college. We didn't really have a college savings plan in my family. And my older brother Jim went to college, and the plan was, well, you're going to work, you're going to borrow money. And after a year and a half, he had to drop out. There just wasn't the funds. And so I was following behind, and I knew if I was going to go to college, if I was going to get the benefit of an education, I would have to get a scholarship. And I was a hard worker, and I was talented, and I got an academic scholarship, and I was able to pay for my full tuition undergrad and most of my tuition at one of the top law schools in the country. And I graduated at the top of my class, and I went to Washington, D.C., and I was practicing at a national law firm, working on major cases all over the country. And I saw what an education can do to someone in terms of opening doors and creating opportunities. And after several years, about 4.5 years, I was representing major corporations when they were getting sued, $350 million lawsuits, the largest criminal grand jury investigation of government contractors in the defense industry in U.S. history. And I was really good at what I did. But I realized I didn't want to represent major corporations. That's not who I was. It didn't speak to my soul. And so I left and I went to Milwaukee, Wisconsin with my wife Heidi. And for the last 27 years, I've been teaching law at Marquette University Law School, giving other people the same benefit of an education that made a difference in my life. And I've been teaching constitutional law, criminal law, and other classes. But I never forgot where I came from. I never forgot that I came from a working class family and an immigrant family. And so even while being a full-time law professor, I have continually worked in the nonprofit sector in southeastern Wisconsin, trying to give back. So I was president of the Latino Community Center. Just ran into, on the campaign trail the other day, just ran into a young man who had been on the staff of the Latino Community Center, and we were reminiscing. It was an organization that intervened with at-risk youth. This was in the neighborhood in Milwaukee that had the highest teen pregnancy rate, the highest dropout rate, the highest gang activity rate in the city of Milwaukee. But these were kids who would get out of school at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and they'd be unsupervised. They were on the streets. They were breaking into parked cars. They were drifting into risky sexual activity because they were latchkey kids. It was a 1-parent home, and that parent was working. Or it was a 2-parent home, but 1 parent was incarcerated, or both were working. And so these kids needed a place to be. And so under my leadership, we bought a building. We put in a kitchen that served a hot meal every night for free. We had a computer lab with 14 computers. And these kids stayed supervised from the time they got out of school at 3 o'clock till after they were fed, and their parents came to pick them up at 7 p.m. We'd have hundreds of kids every night, and you know what? They stayed in school, and the crime rate in the neighborhood went down. Another organization I led was Centro Legal. This was an organization that was a nonprofit designed to provide affordable lawyers to people with legal problems that otherwise would have to go to the courthouse on their own. So one client I'll never forget was a woman. She was married. She didn't speak English very well. One day, her husband disappeared, took off, never came back. After a few months, she figured, fine, he's not coming back. I should get a divorce. But she would pay her rent, she would pay her utilities, she would pay her groceries, and she never had, at the end of the month, an extra $300 or $500 to hire a divorce lawyer. So she stayed married for months and months and months until she came to Centro Legal, and we were able to provide legal help at an affordable price and go with her to the courthouse and get her her divorce, and she got on with her life. Another organization that I helped to lead was the Catholic Charities Legal Services for Immigrants. This is an organization that was founded by a former student of mine. I helped bring it in to Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of Milwaukee, where I was a trustee. It provides low-cost lawyers to families in immigration cases. These are families where, if returned to their home country, they may face political persecution. Or women who, if returned to their home country, there's an abusive spouse waiting. And so they have a legal claim to stay in the US if only they can get to court and make that claim. But we know in immigration cases, if you show up without a lawyer, there's a very high probability you're going to lose. Whereas if you show up with a lawyer, you have a really good chance of winning. And so the Legal Services for Immigrants program continues to provide low-cost, affordable lawyers to immigrant families. So these are examples of where I come from, how I've chosen to spend my time teaching the next generation of judges, of prosecutors, public defenders, elected officials, giving back to the community, providing access to the legal system for everyone, so everyone gets fair treatment. And let me tell you something. Having that kind of perspective matters. And having someone on our state Supreme Court with that experience and that perspective matters. And what I'm going to ask you to do tonight is I'm going to ask you to think about this election a little differently. Because you're always being told, here's who you should vote for. You should vote for, there's only one kind of judge you should vote for. That kind of judge is typically, we're told, it's a criminal lawyer or prosecutor or a trial judge. And that's the only pedigree or professional experience that matters. And I'm here to tell you that's totally wrong. You know, when Judge Karofsky ran for the court the first time in Madison, she criticized her opponent, said her opponent didn't have criminal experience, and that was so important to be a trial judge. And now she's running for the state Supreme Court. And what is the predominant kind of case the state Supreme Court hears? It's not criminal cases, it's civil cases. More than 60% of the cases are civil. I don't think she's ever represented a single human being in a single civil lawsuit in her entire career. But she'll tell you, oh, no, that doesn't matter anymore. Now there's a different criteria that matters. And so what I'm asking you to do is think about it a little differently and take your vote back and think about it this way. Who's the kind of justice we want to elect? Right? I think we know the kind of justice we would like to see on our state Supreme Court. There's only 7 seats. I think we'd like to see someone like Justice Shirley Abrahamson, who was a law professor before she became a member of our state Supreme Court, and never a trial judge. Or we'd like to see someone like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was a law professor and an appellate litigator before she was appointed to the courts. Or we'd like to see someone like Thurgood Marshall, who again was never a trial judge before he was appointed to the courts. We know the kind of judges we need in Wisconsin, and they're not the judges that we're getting. So I'm asking you to take your vote back. And sometimes when we talk about diversity of experience and something different, sometimes people get that little nagging voice in the back of their head, right? The nagging voice that says, yes, the different perspectives are good, but you know, qualifications matter. Well, I'm here to tell you, I'm the most qualified candidate in this race. I have been regularly sought out by national and even international media for my opinion on constitutional law questions, legal issues facing our country. Senator Herb Kohl asked me on 4 occasions to advise him on pending U.S. Supreme Court nominations. I helped him prepare for the nomination hearings of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Stephen Breyer, Sonia Sotomayor, and Elena Kagan. When I wrote about the obstruction when Mitch McConnell refused to even hold a hearing for Merrick Garland, and I wrote about that, I was contacted by the Obama White House Office of Communications, and they asked me, hey, will you go in a nationwide press conference with 2 other law professors? Will you go and repeat that and tell the media what you wrote? And so I did. I am the most qualified candidate on day 1 to sit on that court, because that court is not a criminal court predominantly. It's a court that decides our rights. It's a court that decides, what does equal protection mean? What does the right to vote mean? And how far can the state legislature go in throwing up barriers to that? Right? What does it mean to have a right to control your body and make decisions about your own reproductive health? Those are the important questions, and we need to have a state Supreme Court with justices who have a variety of experiences and a variety of backgrounds, so that then we get justice, not justices that all come from the same narrow experience. And so, I'm convinced that if you think about qualifications, diversity of experience, breadth of legal knowledge, and who is best prepared to sit in that chair and make these important decisions, I'm convinced that you will support Ed Fallone for Supreme Court. So thank you very much.
All right, and then next up is Judge Jill Karofsky.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Happy New Year. It's nice to be back here in the Firefly Coffee House. I love this place. My name's Jill Karofsky. I'm a judge, and I'm running for the Supreme Court because we have got to get this court back on track. I have spent the past several months traveling all around Wisconsin, and I hear the same thing from voters. What they see on the Supreme Court are justices who do not follow the rule of law. Justices who make decisions before anyone ever sets foot in the state Supreme Court chamber. They see justices who are more interested in protecting corporations than in stopping corporations from polluting our air and our water. They see justices who are acting like politicians, and that feels like corruption to people. Who we have on our Supreme Court matters. These elections have incredible consequences for us today and for the future of our state. Think about the kinds of cases the Supreme Court is going to hear in the next several years. They're for sure going to hear a case on redistricting, right? We're going to have a census very, very soon. And as a result of that census, our legislative lines are going to be redrawn. And as sure as I am standing here, there is going to be a case in the Wisconsin Supreme Court about what our legislative lines are going to look like in the state of Wisconsin. I believe the Supreme Court of Wisconsin is going to hear cases about women's access to health care. How are we going to keep our air and our water clean? What's Wisconsin's response going to be to criminal justice reform? The climate crisis? What is democracy in our state going to look like? All of these cases are going to come in front of the Supreme Court. And so I am in this race to offer a very, very clear choice. On the one hand, you have a guy named Dan Kelly, the last person who was appointed to the Supreme Court by Scott Walker. And Scott Walker put Dan Kelly on the court even though Dan Kelly did not have 1 minute of judicial experience. But that didn't matter, did it? Because Scott Walker wanted to put someone on that court who would protect the interests of corporations, who would protect the interests of the wealthy, who would protect the interests of the outside special interests that work so hard to keep Dan Kelly, to put Dan Kelly on the court, and are going to work so hard to keep him on the court. And Dan Kelly has carried their water. He hasn't spilled a drop of their water. What I'm bringing to this race are three things: my experience, my values, my Wisconsin values, and my energy. As for my experience, I'm the only person in this race who is or who has ever been a trial court judge. I sit in a courtroom every day, and I see how the law impacts real people. I was in the courtroom for over 8 hours today, presiding over a homicide case and a sexual assault case and a number of other cases. I see every day how important it is to follow the rule of law. And when I interpret the Constitution, I do it with today in mind because it is 2020. I've been a prosecutor. I know how to be smart on crime. I know how important it is to protect rights of individuals, of witnesses, of victims, of defendants, of members of the public. I have experience in civil law. I was the general counsel for a national nonprofit for many, many years. And I've been a law professor. I was a professor at the only public law school in Wisconsin, where I taught here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where I taught trial ad. And I taught a course on victims in the criminal justice system. And I've also been a victim advocate. I was the state's first violence against women resource prosecutor, and I was head of the state's Office of Crime Victim Services. I help victims in every single county of this state seek justice in their cases. That's the experience I'm bringing to this race. As for my values, born and raised in Dane County, I grew up in Madison. Excuse me, I grew up in Middleton.
Yay, Middleton.
Yay, Middleton. Go Cardinals. When I was growing up, my mom was mayor of Middleton. My mom was one of the first women mayors in Wisconsin history. I watched my mom bring emergency medical service into Middleton. I watched her bring buses into Middleton. I was so proud of my mom. The first time I set foot in a courtroom, it was to change my middle name so I could be named after her. I was only 10 years old. And my dad was a local pediatrician. When my dad retired, the first thing he did was open up a free clinic for teenagers because he knew these kids wouldn't have access to health care any other way. My parents taught me how important public service was. My parents taught me how important my community is. My parents taught me how important it is to stand up and lean in with whatever gifts you have to help people around you. And now, I'm the head of my own house. I am the single mom of 2 teenagers. My kids and I all went to public school, and we had wonderful, wonderful teachers. I talked to my kids about the importance of women's rights and workers' rights and human rights and civil rights. When I talked to my kids about entering this race, I said, what are you concerned about? They're concerned about gun violence. My kids don't want to go to school anymore for code red drills. They want to go to school to learn. And they're concerned about the climate crisis because this is the planet that we are handing to them. And my kids see corruption on the state and on the national level, and they're looking to the grown-ups in the room to do something about it, and that is the least that we could be doing for our kids. Those are the values that I'm bringing to this race. As far as my energy, I was a state tennis champion. I was a D1 athlete in track and cross country. I finished the Ironman triathlon 2 times. I now can run 50-mile races. I ran a race where I started in Belleville. This is the beginning of August, Belleville. I ran south of Monroe, back up to Belleville in 11 hours and 22 minutes. We had a campaign swing in October. I worked all day on a Friday, drove up to Ashland, woke up the next morning, ran the entire Whistle Stop Marathon. An hour later, we had a campaign event in Washburn. I got up the next day, went to Merrill, Green Bay. I was back home at 10, and I was on the bench Monday morning at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I'm telling you this for one reason and one reason only. I have never been outworked or out-hustled, and there is no way that Dan Kelly is going to outwork or out-hustle me in this race. I am really proud to have the endorsement of Justice Rebecca Dallet. I'm very proud to have the endorsement of the last 3 Democratic governors in Wisconsin, Governors Doyle, Schreiber, and Earl. I have the endorsement of over 25 Democratic legislators. I have bipartisan support from judges and from DAs and from sheriffs from all across Wisconsin. We know to win this race, we need to have a grassroots campaign. We have had over 2,000 individual donations to our campaign. We have to build this from the ground up. That's the way that we beat Dan Kelly. So I want to leave you with 3 dates. The first date is February 18th. February 18th is the primary in this race. It's a little over 6 weeks from now. And some people are saying, I want to wait until after the primary to get involved in this race. And I am here to tell you that might be too little too late. That's exactly what Dan Kelly wants to do. That gives him an 8 or 9 or 10-month head start. We need to get involved today. You need to get involved today. The second date is April 7th. April 7th is the general election date in the Wisconsin Supreme Court race. It's also Wisconsin's presidential primary. So voter turnout should be high. But we have our work to do. We need to make sure people vote all the way down that ballot. The third date is this, 2023. We will not have the opportunity to elect another justice to the Wisconsin Supreme Court until 2023. 2020 is our year. It is our year to win back your seat on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. My commitment to you tonight is that I am going to run as hard and as fast as I can between now and April 7th to win this seat back. We're going to win this race. I can't do it alone, though. I need your help. Please join us on this journey. Our website is jillforjustice.com. We have a Facebook page, we have a Twitter page, we have Instagram, because my kids said you have to have an Instagram page. I'm going to run really, really hard. I hope you will join us. Thank you very much.
All right, have both candidates come on up here. I want to apologize too because our normal sound guy is out of town, so it's me working these controls, and if we're getting a little feedback, I'm doing my best here. The best thing to do is keep the microphones kind of behind the amp, if that helps with it. Probably should have said that, but you were both on such a roll, I didn't really want to interrupt, I figured we'd just let it go, and now I'll explain. So this is a wireless mic, which is good, and it picks up a lot. This one you have to, if you're using this one, you gotta hold it a little closer.
Sounds good.
So, okay, we'll get some questions here. These are the ones. First. Oh, I don't know. Well, I can ask. They can have it. You don't have to answer. Okay. Let's see. Somebody wanted to know, they said, please explain where you would consider yourself on the spectrum of originalist to non-originalist with regard to the Wisconsin Constitution. And you may have to explain what that means to the rest of us. Go ahead.
You are going to hear a guy, you're going to hear Dan Kelly talk about the fact that he's an originalist. And that is going to be, he's going to say, that is how I reach the conclusion that I reach in all my decisions. He's not an originalist. He's too outcome driven in all the decisions that he makes. He can't point out a decision where he has ruled against his political or his personal interest. He was asked that question when we had a debate in November, and he couldn't do it. I believe that what we need is to have justices who are committed to following the rule of law. And if you come into my courtroom, you will see a judge who is committed to following the rule of law every single time. I rule against my personal beliefs all the time. I do it every day. I'll give you an example. In OWI cases, in drunk driving cases, if someone is in my courtroom and it's a fourth or a fifth or a sixth OWI and that case is going to trial, I'm not allowed to tell the jury that it's a fourth or fifth or sixth OWI. I kind of think the jury ought to know that. That's my personal belief, but that's not what the law is. So I don't do that. I follow the law. So you're going to hear words about being, the originalist or other things from Dan Kelly in this campaign. We've heard it from other candidates in elections like this. And to me, I think it is code for just being outcome driven. It is just a word that they use to try to justify the way that they always are able to find in favor of those who got them on the court and want to keep them on the court.
Well, I think what you see here is the difference between a very narrow experience and a broad experience. One of the benefits of being an expert in the Constitution and studying the Constitution and studying the history of the Constitution is you know what it says and you're not afraid to talk about it. And I'm a proud originalist when it comes to the Wisconsin Constitution because our state's Constitution is a progressive document. If you understand the history. It is a document that protects our right to self-government. That was one of the founding principles of the Wisconsin Constitution, was to ensure that all of us can participate in the making of the laws that affect our lives. And so when it comes time, when the gerrymandering case comes to the state Supreme Court, we need to have justices who understand the original intent behind our Constitution. It's a Constitution. Our state Constitution is one that protects local rule, local government, and allows local governments to make decisions. So when our justices on the court say that, in the state legislature, they can create uniform rules for the whole state, and it doesn't matter if you're in Kewaunee County or Grant County, you have to listen and do what the state legislature says. That's contrary to the original intent of our state Constitution. And there are myriad other ways where the Wisconsin Constitution was one of the most progressive. And I think it's important to have justices on our court who understand that, and they aren't deciding cases based on their political leanings. They're being true to our state's progressive tradition.
I'll have you hang on to that, and I'll use this one to ask
Okay.
questions. Okay, and and I'll ask this one, we'll start with you this time, we'll kind of go back and forth. Okay, so this question, someone wants to know, what is your strategy for reaching out to voters statewide?
Well, if you've seen my Facebook page, Falone for Justice, you know my strategy. Go everywhere. And many people have told me how much they enjoy following me on my Facebook page. It's sort of like, where's Waldo or where's Ed? Because I am committed to going everywhere around the state. And I also have the benefit of having run for the Wisconsin Supreme Court 6 years ago in 2013. Because I said then, we had a court that had descended into dysfunction, where they were fighting amongst each other all the time. We even had one justice physically assault another justice in the courthouse. And as I go around the state, people tell me, I'm happy you're running again. I'm glad you're running again because you are a voice of reason. I wish we could have elected you. And I don't think the answer in this election is to generate more fighting among the justices and to call each other names and to poison the atmosphere even more than it is. I think I was right in 2013. We've got to get the court focused so that the justices spend less time bickering amongst themselves and more time working for the people of Wisconsin. I was right in 2013, and I'm right today.
In order to win this race, we need to do a couple of things. Number one, we have got to build a grassroots effort. We lost, the last Supreme Court race was lost by less than 6,000 votes. So these races are won on the margins. And you all know how important it is. So we need to motivate voters like you to go out and knock on doors and to be willing to talk to people about this election, to get excited about this race and the difference that a new justice could make on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. So we have built a grassroots campaign, and we are continuing to build a grassroots campaign. We have had almost 1,500 individuals contribute to our campaign. That's grassroots. As I already mentioned, we've had over 2,000 contributions to our campaign. We have raised over $350,000 in this race in our grassroots effort. Person to person, phone call to phone call, handshake to handshake. The other way that you win these races is by making sure that you're getting your message out to everyone in Wisconsin. You need to have the resources to be able to do that. You've got to be able to get the message all the way up to Ashland and all the way over to Door County and all the way south to Racine, and all the way over to Grant County as well. And we are working really hard to continue to get those resources so that we can get our message out. Also need to travel around the state. I agree with Ed when it comes to that. And we have been all over the state. And people are super excited about our campaign, and that's why we have such a high number of individual contributions to our campaign, because they're fired up by what they see. They like the energy that we have, and they know that we are the team to beat Dan Kelly in April.
Thanks. Yeah, if we're alternating, it'll probably be.
Got excited about the handoff.
So this question is from Ro Parker from the town of Oregon. He says, some sources discuss computer data models of districts. Should the Supreme Court use data models to determine what is a fair district for elections?
So I want to be very careful about making any sort of decision that I might be faced with if it got to the Supreme Court. I mean, Wisconsin should have a fair way of drafting the districts. It ought to be, we shouldn't have the Republicans in the legislature be drafting our lines, because otherwise you get a state cut up the way Wisconsin was cut up in 2010. So we need to make sure that every single person's vote in this state counts and matters. And when you've got lines drawn up the way that we have had lines drawn up, that's not what we have in Wisconsin. So we need to have fair districts. And we need to have districts that are representative of people in every single community, in every single region, in every single part of this state.
Permit me to explain what the question was about and what the answer is under the Constitution. The United States Constitution, according to the Supreme Court of the United States, does not allow federal judges to decide the difference between a legislative district that is kind of gerrymandered and a legislative district that is extremely gerrymandered. The United States Supreme Court says we can't tell the difference. That was wrong because there are plenty of computer models that will tell us with a very high degree of probability that the only possible justification for drawing the district the way it was based on the partisan political registration of the voters. They had plenty of different scientific models they could have chosen to follow. They decided we don't like any of them, but they left the question to our state Supreme Courts. And so this is exactly the question that's going to come before the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Can we use established computer models, there's a variety to choose from, that tell us with a very high degree of probability the only justification for drawing the map the way they did and splitting the voting district right down Main Street. So if you're on the north side of Main Street, you vote in this district. If you're on the south side, you vote on that. That the only possible justification to a very high degree of probability is because they were trying to get a partisan advantage. And it's important to have justices who understand these issues.
So I have two more questions left up here. If anybody else has more questions, wave them and Claire will come around and grab them. Okay, not seeing any. So I don't know if Judge Karofsky answered this already, but I'll pose it again to both of you because I wasn't sure if you were talking about the whole for both the candidates or just your campaign. If you can't answer this question, don't. I'm not trying to get it, but somebody wants to know how much have you raised so far and from how many people?
We're going to be filing our campaign finance report. It's not finished. I'll say this. Running for the Supreme Court is an important enterprise. We elect our judges. I happen to believe that we should elect our judges. And the reason I believe that is because it forces our candidates to get out there, to go around the state, to meet with voters, right? If we just appointed people, it would be all 100% your political connections. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to meet people. You don't have to listen to their concerns. I like the fact that we elect our judges and that they have to go out and talk to the people of Wisconsin. That will make me a better judge when I'm on the state Supreme Court. The downside of our elections, we see it all the time. Our state Supreme Court races have descended into the same sort of partisan mudslinging that is turning us off and turning people off politics all over. And we cannot allow that to happen. We can't let an election for Supreme Court justice come down to who's able to raise the most money or has the most money. That has nothing to do with the kind of justice we want. Or who's willing to get down in the gutter and throw the most mud. That is the opposite of the kind of justice we want.
We have raised over $350,000 in this race. We have over 2,000 individual contributions. We are not going to be anywhere close in this filing deadline, though, to Dan Kelly, because he is going to have a machine behind him when it comes to this race. The only way that we beat Dan Kelly is with a grassroots campaign, because we have the numbers. There are more people who are willing to go to the voting booth, we believe, and vote for us than for Dan Kelly. But you do have to have the resources to run a statewide campaign. These campaigns don't run themselves. So we have worked hard, and we are really, really excited to have that many people as excited about this race as I am.
Yeah, may as well keep it. The question here is from Terry Donovan from Madison. I'm not sure if that's a male or female. My apologies. Oh, okay. So he would like to have you both please provide your website and address the recent decision to remove 230,000 voters from the list of eligible voters.
Our campaign website is jillforjustice.com. You don't have to worry about the Karofsky part, just jillforjustice.com. Look, the other side is going to do whatever they can to win. And if it means that they are going to try to keep people away from the polls, they're going to try to do that. They wouldn't try to keep people from voting. They wouldn't try to keep people away from the polls if they weren't worried about how they were going to vote. And so we're going to have to see how this plays out, but it's pretty evident that what's going to happen is they're going to bypass the Court of Appeals again in this case, and the Supreme Court is going to decide it, and you know, based on who's on the Supreme Court, what the outcome is going to be. I mean, that's the problem with this court right now, is there are justices on it who make decisions before there's been an argument, justices who make decisions before anyone ever walks into the state Supreme Court chamber.
This sort of black-white view of the world is simplistic. It comes from a pure prosecutor point of view, which is this is how the world works. There's good guys, there's bad guys. And this is not the kind of broad experience we need on the court. I'll put it to you very simply. There's two legal questions in this lawsuit. The first is there is a state law that says there has to be regular purges of voter data when there's indications people have used more than one address in the year, and they're trying to figure out where do they live. There's nothing abnormal about that. Over 32 states across the country participate in a program to do that, to make sure people only have one residence, and that's their voting, and they're voting at that residence. But there's an important legal question, which is the way the statute is written. It's not clear that it actually applies to our current election commission, because that was created recently and the statute predates it, and the language used doesn't seem to refer to the current election commission. So there's a real question here. How do we read the law? Does it apply? And this is exactly the kind of question where I could turn to a conservative on the court, someone I don't agree with on any issue, and I could say, but you must agree with me. We have to interpret the language the way it's written, and if it doesn't refer to the Wisconsin Election Commission, then you have to agree they can't purge the rolls. If you understand the legal issues, you can reach across and try to appeal and find common ground. If you demonize the other side, again and again, even before you join the court, how are you going to work with those people once you're on the bench? The website is falloneforjustice.com, and I just want to reiterate, even though I said something about money, politics, you should still contribute. I guess I shouldn't say that.
Were there any other slips? Because I'm down to the last question here. All right. Looks like this will probably be the last one, unless someone gets one in under the wire. Somebody says, I understand that the two highest vote getters in the primary will advance to the April election. If this is true, why are you not promoting each other's candidacy with the hope of knocking Dan Kelly out of the April election? Save the best for last, right?
I will say this. I've run a very positive campaign. I've run a campaign based on my qualifications, the principles I have followed and fought for my entire career. Nothing has changed. You can go back to my 2013 campaign. You can read that campaign literature. It's the same thing I'm saying today. You can go back to the things I fought for, equal rights for immigrants, separation of church and state, keeping the government out of our healthcare decisions if they're using religious motivations, providing equal access to the courts for everyone. You can go back 30 years of my career. I haven't changed a thing I've said. So I think what I'm asking you to do is imagine the kind of justice you want to see on our state Supreme Court, especially now that Shirley Abramson has retired. And pick affirmatively, choose the reason to vote for someone, not vote based on, I don't know what you're afraid of. Thank you.
Ed and I both chuckled when the question was asked because we've heard it a number of times on this campaign trail. It's just not the way Wisconsin is right now. The chances of both of us making it through the primary are very, very bleak. I can't imagine how that could happen. Dan Kelly's going to make it through this primary, and we need to figure out how we can make sure that Dan Kelly doesn't get 10 more years on our Wisconsin Supreme Court, because the decisions that he would hear are too important to Wisconsinites today, to our children, and to our grandchildren. And so I am running a campaign on my values, I'm running a campaign on my experience, and I'm running a campaign on my energy. And I'm doing everything I can to motivate voters to join us so that we do not have 10 more years of Dan Kelly on our Supreme Court. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Fantastic. I think both candidates are going to stick around for a little while, so I don't know if till close. I know Professor Falone said, so
Yeah,
you should.
Let's close the place. Come on.
Yeah, yeah. Firefly closes at 8, just so everybody knows. So thanks for that. That was great. And we are going to proceed to the open mic portion, but I do have a couple of announcements. I hope you will stick around for the open mic portion. We've got some important things going on, some candidates for office, other ones that want to speak, and announcement things upcoming about the upcoming elections. So the first announcement I have is that the Oregon Area Progressives, we try to be good community members, and we do quarterly inventories for the Oregon Area Food Pantry. So anybody who is looking for a way to give back to the community can show up tomorrow morning at 8:30 in the morning. We're going to do an inventory. The more the merrier. You can bring kids. They can help out. You know, older kids is easier, but teens and tweens are welcome to come. It's a good chance to volunteer as a family. And we just do it quarterly, so show up. All you have to do is show up, and the more people are there, the faster it goes. We're usually done by 10:30, so you're looking at like no more than a 2-hour commitment. And it's pretty easy too. We check expiration dates and we wipe down shelving, and we just kind of sort through the food that's there, and then any other special things that they have for us. But it's not like heavy lifting. It's not a hard job. So come on out, bring your family. Question? The Oregon Area Food Pantry is, I don't have the address in front of me, but it's, oh, Marcy, where's Marcy? There you are. What's the address of the food pantry? It's right behind the People's United Methodist Church in Oregon. It's off Highway CC. Yeah, and Alpine. Yeah, Highway CC and Alpine Parkway, that corner. There's a big white church, you cannot miss it. And there's a small building behind it, and that is the Oregon Area Food Pantry.
107 Alpine.
107 Alpine Parkway. Yep, thanks. And then the first person I'm going to ask up is, well, first out there are slips at the front that you can fill out if you want to speak for the open mic. It's about 3 minutes. You can rant, you can sing a song, read a poem, doesn't matter. It's kind of open to whatever, but we just ask that you keep it family friendly and within about 3 minutes. The first person I'm going to ask up is Mackenzie Lowe from the Democratic Party of Wisconsin.
Hello everyone, my name is Mackenzie. I am the regional organizer with the state party for Dane and Rock County. as we just heard from both Ed and Jill, this election is so huge, and the stakes are just so incredibly high. And, you know, after February 18th, whoever wins in that runoff, the party plans on getting behind them full force. You know, we cannot risk another 10 years living in this gerrymandered state, and electing either one of them will help prevent that. And so, you know, it's in a low turnout election as well, you can have an even bigger impact than you would in a presidential. Because voter turnout is lower, there's a lower name identification with voters, and so going and knocking on doors, making phone calls is so unbelievably important. And I think Jill mentioned that, you know, the April 7th election is the same day as the presidential primary. That is not a guarantee that a Democrat will win the state Supreme Court race. Back in 2016, when Bernie and Hillary were in the primary here in Wisconsin, Rebecca Kloppenburg was also on the ballot. If everyone that would have voted for Bernie and Hillary voted for Kloppenburg, she would have won, but she didn't. And so it is just so unbelievably important that we get involved and we're energized now. And so I'm going to pass around a clipboard because the Oregon Area Progressives have a volunteer re-engagement party coming up on February 21st. It's going to be here. No, okay.
Oregon Youth Center.
Oh, at the Youth Center. Great. And so if you are interested in coming at all, please let us know on the clipboard or let Amanda know. And then there's also an option just to say yes to volunteering this spring. Because we need all of your help. However you can help is so appreciated, and it will go such a long way. And you know, it's the day after Election Day, you never want to regret that you couldn't have done maybe a little bit more to help get a progressive elected to the state Supreme Court. And so I am going to pass around that clipboard and let me know if you have any questions, but thank you so much.
So just a few more details on what Mackenzie was talking about. The Volunteer Re-Engagement Party is February 21st at the Oregon Youth Center, which is 110 North Oak Street in Oregon. It is starts at 6:30 p.m. And that is a Sunday. Friday. Friday. It's a Friday. But we have some special guests. We know that Ben Wickler, the head of the state Democratic Party, is going to be there, and we're going to talk some strategy and get people really energized to canvass and phone bank and do all that kind of important work, which helps elect people that move the state in the direction we want. Okay, are there any slips for open mic portion? Does anybody? If not, I can do mine because I was going to fill out a slip today. So this is me taking off my MC hat. Putting it over there. Hey, everybody. So my name is Amanda Peterson, and I am on the Oregon Village Board, and I am running for re-election in the spring. I have nomination papers that I would love to have anybody who wants to sign. You have to live in the Village of Oregon, though. But a little bit about the reason I ran 2 years ago. There were some projects. We're building a new library in Oregon, and I wanted to see that project through and help raise money and do everything I can to make that happen. I ran to try to get some affordable housing in Oregon, so I've been attending some of the housing committee meetings, and that is also a work in progress. And I feel like these 2 years have been very educational. I'm starting to see how things work together. I've served on the Public Works Committee. I've served on the Parks Board. I'm on the OCA Media Board. And I want to continue to do that work. It's exciting and interesting to me because I'm a big nerd and I like all those little details and minutia of how you run a municipality. So I would really appreciate your vote on April 7th. This is an April 7th vote that would take place. So I ask for your vote. Thank you so much. Okay, MC hat back on. Do we have any slips? Did anybody want to say anything from the mic? It's not required, but now's your chance, because otherwise I'll close it off and everyone can socialize. Okay, cool. Last thing, thank you to the Firefly. Please patronize them. They're so generous to let us use this space. We appreciate them. And have a great day. We'll have a great program coming up in February, first Friday of February, so mark your calendar. You'll get an email if you sign up in the back. And thank you so much.